So we are back at the tables, buying in again for 200 euros in this 2-2 game. In the first orbits and the first hour we play pretty short-handed, like 4 to 6-handed, so maybe keep that in mind. After some hands, someone recognizing something is wrong with the card deck, so we get another one. And guess what? What is the first hand we get dealt? That's right, pocket aces. But unfortunately we don't get any action. But guess what? What is the next hand we get dealt? Right after we get aces, we get pocket kings. So with this pocket kings we are in the cutoff and I raise it to 7 euros. Only the button calls and the blinds fold. We see a flop of Jack 5-3 rainbow. I see bet 7 euros and the button calls. The turn brings the ace of hearts. So brings in the backdoor flush draw, but we have the king of hearts. I check and the button checks back. The river is the ace of diamonds. Here I think I can definitely go for value, so I bet 20 euros. The button tanks for a bit and finds a call. I turn over my pocket kings and we are good. So we scoop a first nice pot. In this hand we are still short-handed. The button raises to 6 euro. The small blind defends and I look down at 8-7 offsuit. I defend my big blind and we go to a flop. The flop comes 10-8-5 rainbow. It checks to the button and he bets 12 euro. The small blind calls and I decide to call as well. The turn is the 6 of diamonds. It brings in the backdoor flush draw and we have an open-ended straight draw to our pair. The small blind checks, I check, but this time the button checks back as well. The river is the jack of clubs. The small blind checks again and here I have an idea to turn my middle pair into a bluff. We have the 7 blocker for the straight, so I go for it and bet 35 euros. The button gets out of the way pretty quickly, but the small blind goes into the tank. But just for a little bit and then he finds a call and shows queen jack offsuit. So we lose this one. So in this one I have ace queen offsuit in the cutoff and I make it 7 euros to go. Only the small blind calls. The flop comes king queen 4 rainbow. The small blind checks and I decide to check back for pot control even though I might have the best hand. The turn is an offsuit 2. The small blind checks again and I bet 10 euros, which the small blind immediately calls. The river is a 10. The small blind checks again. I bet 16 euros because I think I still have the best hand and may get value from worse queens and maybe lower pocket pairs that don't believe us, but unfortunately the small blind folds and we take a small pot. So in this one we are in the small blind. We see a limp in the hijack and it folds to me and I look down at pocket queens. I make it 10 euros to go. Maybe I should go a little bigger out of position, but maybe next time. The hijack calls and we go to a flop heads up. The flop is king 8-6 with 2 hearts. I see bet 10 euros because I think I still have the best hand most of the times and I don't see the hijack player have too many strong kings. The hijack player calls. The turn is the 10 of hearts. Here I decide to slow down a little even though we get a flush draw to our second pair and I check. Now the hijack player bets 17 euros. For this price, with our second pair and the second nut flush draw, I call. The river is the 7 of hearts, so we get our flush, we have the second nuts and here I have a decision. Even though it looks kinda strong if I lead here, I don't want the hijack player to check back his lower hard hands, which most likely will happen. So I lead 35 euros before the hijack player insta-folds and we take down another pot. So in this one we are on the low jack and look down at queen jack offsuit. Maybe a little loose from this position, but I don't want to be a nit and can't play at premiums all the time. So I make it 7 euros to go and of course we get 3 callers. So we go to a flop 4 ways of queen 4-3 rainbow. Pretty good flop. I c-bet 15 euros and only the big blind calls. The turn is an offsuit king. We both check this card. The river is another queen. So we have trips. The big blind checks to me and here I decide to bet bigger. Kinda polarized myself. This time I have it, but unfortunately the big blind folds. In this hand I'm in the cutoff and we see one limp in front of us. Or actually we don't see it, so I just make it 7 euros to go with king jack of hearts. The big blind and the limper ends up calling. We go 3 ways to a flop of king, king, 4. Pretty good. I c-bet 10 euros and only the original limper calls. So we go heads up to the flop, which brings the deuce of spades. Brings in a backdoor flush draw, but nothing too exciting, nothing we have to care about. So I bet 20 euros after she checks to me and she calls again. The river is an offsuit 3, clean run out for us. She checks to us again and here I definitely go for value. The question is of how big I make this bet. I decide to go for 55 euros and here she goes into the tank a little bit. But finally end up calling. We show our king jack suited, she mugs and we are good. So to this point the session is pretty much smooth sailing and we hope we can continue like this. So in the next one the $4 button straddle is on and the small blind who is first to act in this hand limps in for 4 euros. I'm in a low jack with ace queen offsuit. I make it 18 euros to go. The straddle and the limper calls. So we go 3 ways to a flop of king, queen, 7. The limper checks to me and here I decide to bet 30 euros because we have the ace of hearts in our hand and can probably bet any turn with a heart. The straddler folds, but now the limper raises to 80 euro. He's a pretty tight player, so I don't think he has that many bluffs in his range, especially when I hold the ace of hearts. And after some consideration, I let my hand go and fold. In the next one, we have ace-3 offsuit in the small blind. Under the gun raises to 6 euro and there are 3 callers before it gets to me, so I defend my small blind and the big blind calls as well. So we go 6 ways to a flop of jack, 9, 5, all spades. So we have the nut flush draw. I check, the big blind checks, under the gun bets 17 euros. It folds to the button who calls and I call as well. We go 3 ways to a turn, which is the 4 of spades. So we have the nuts right now. I check to the initial raiser and he checks and the button checks as well. We hope for a clean river, which we get in form of the 6 of hearts. Now I definitely have to go for value and I bet 35 euros. Under the gun calls pretty quickly, which makes me pretty happy. But now the button goes into the tank. What is he thinking about? I'm pretty sure under the gun holds a high spade card as well. But what is the button thinking about? After like 1 minute, he decides on a call as well. I turn over the nuts and of course I'm good. Under the gun shows the king of spades, which makes sense. And the button don't show his hand. But he later told me he had the queen of spades. Pretty light call in my opinion, when you think about we went 6 ways to this flop, but I take it. Thank you very much, sir. So in this hand, the under the gun player raises to 7 euros and I look down at ace jack offsuit in under the gun +1. The under the gun player is a relatively aggressive player, so I decide to 3-bet to 21 euros. It folds all the way to the small blind who cold calls the 3-bet and then the undergun player calls as well. So we go 3 ways to a flop of queen, 6, deuce, rainbow. The small blind and under the gun checks to us and on this flop I c-bet 25 euro. To tell the story, I really have a good hand since I 3-betted from under the gun +1. Unfortunately they both call. So we go to a turn and the turn is an offsuit 4. So nothing really changes. Since both players called on the flop, I don't think I can continue. They check to me and I check back. The river is a 3. So again, nothing really changes. They both check to me again, but since they called me both on the flop, I don't think I can represent the hand now and they both fold. So I check back. Under the gun shows queen 10 offsuit and the small blind shows pocket jacks. We lose this one. So here the $4 button straddle is on, and I'm in the big blind almost next to act and look down at pocket tens. I make it 15 euros to go and only the straddler calls. So we go heads up to a flop of queen 4-3 with 2 diamonds. I c-bet 20 euros since he will defend his straddle button very wide. He calls and we go to a turn, the 4 of hearts. I check and he checks back. The river brings in the jack of clubs. I consider to go for very thin value here, but in the end I decide to check with the intention to call a bet, but he pretty quickly checks back. I turn over my tens and they are good. There's one last hand I want to go over and it's kinda a fun one. The $4 button straddle is on again and I'm in the cutoff and look down at king jack offsuit. I make it 15 euros to go and only the button straddle calls. We go heads up to a flop of 10-7-4 rainbow. I check and the button checks back. The river comes the ace of spades, so it brings in the backdoor flush draw. The ace is in general a very good card for me and for my range, so I bet 17 euros with our gut shot and the button makes the call. The river breaks out, it's an offsuit 4 and yeah, here I have a decision if I want to continue bluffing to represent an ace, but in the end I decide to check to him, basically give up on the hand, and after a few moments he checks back. At first I thought about straight mucking my hand, but in the end showed him my king jack, really thought I will definitely lose this hand, but to my surprise the button says you're good. He shows the king of spades, so he probably defended his button with some king x of spades hand and bricked out. To my surprise he didn't bluff the river. Fortunate for us, I take down the last pot of the night and after that hand I cashed out for 425 euros. I had to get up early the next morning, so I call it a night and leave the table. Again, very short session update in the car. We booked another win. We were into the game for 200 euros and we are out of the game for 425. So makes a profit of 225. Pretty good result for a 3-hour session. Thank you for watching and yeah, if you liked the video, please leave a like, subscribe. Thank you very much. Goodbye guys.